走り出せ走り出せ空高く鳩と差し
Hi guys, it's Wasabifold here with another One Piece video for you, and today we're going to be discussing the possibility of Nami attaining the Yuki Yuki no Mi, Monet's Devil Fruit. Now if you don't know the theory is that the Devil Fruit is currently on the Thousand Sunny. If you want a further explanation of why, you can check out Roger Spade's video, but I don't want this video to be overly long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the question at hand. Does Nami actually need the Yuki Yuki no Mi? And there are a lot of pros and cons as to how this devil fruit would actually work in her hands, and I have done an analysis of how this particular devil fruit would change her fighting style, but I'll deal with that later. What I want to deal with are the pros and cons that I think this devil fruit could address. I personally believe that Nami has kind of stagnated. I think her development throughout the series has kind of taken a backseat to the development of the climb attack in a way. Before, the climb attack pre-time skip was a great weapon in my opinion. It was probably one of the most creative weapons in the crew, and that is because it was authentically something that needed Nami to work. It wasn't like a super powerful weapon that gave you strength just from having it. It was something that Nami was using in a way that no one else in the world would probably have thought of. It was something that worked because of her instead of working in spite of her. And now, post-time skip, I feel like her weapon works in spite of her. Yes, no one has the inner workings or the inner understandings of, the weather science from Weatheria, but I feel like she doesn't have to use her creativity to create her weather anymore. It's all pre-packaged and pre-done and put inside the stick, and all she really needs to do is summon it on call. And I really don't like that. I feel like it takes the ingenuity out of Nami's fighting. And if you look at it, Oda hasn't given Nami a single fight since the time skip. I don't think Nami has had a single named opponent. She didn't even get one in Fishman Island when the crew were basically supposed to just wreck house. She basically just took out that one random angler fisherman who attacked her from behind. But other than that, she didn't get anyone with an actual name that we can recall. And I think one of the worst moments, I think, for Nami post-time skip, and one of the reasons why I just don't like the sorcery climb attack, is what happened at the end of Punk Hazard. When she came out of that tunnel, running with the kids in the giant cart, she saw Baby Five and the other, Doflamingo executive person, I can't remember his name right now, fleeing. She and Usopp both posted about how enemies that are fleeing, that have lost the will to fight, are their absolute, their speciality. And I know Oda was trying to make a joke, but for us to believe that these characters still believe that that is acceptable in the New World, to me, was a big slap in the face of what Luffy went through in Impel Down and Marineford. I mean, Luffy had a complete breakdown. Luffy was the strongest in the crew, and he had a complete breakdown. He realized that he was weak and he needed to get stronger. And even though the crew resolved themselves to get stronger, for them to still make that point that enemies that are running away are their speciality, enemies that are fleeing, enemies that have lost the will to fight, instead of enemies that are ready to take you on, you want to take on enemies who don't want to take you on. I was very disappointed by that, and I know Oda meant it as a comedic moment, but I didn't find it funny. So I really want Nami to be developed in a way where I don't need to see that anymore. I don't want to see Nami taking on opponents who are running, or having her opponents be very complacent against her, uncharacteristically so. I want to see Nami fight an opponent who takes her seriously, and she takes them seriously, and they take on each other together, and Nami wins because of her own ingenuity and her own creativity. I want to see Nami develop to a point where she can do that in the series, and it's no longer about taking on fleeing enemies. And this might just be a stage of her development, and I know that she's probably going to be that way by the end, but I'm trying to look for something that could potentially aid in doing so. And the question remains why Oda hasn't utilized her in a more serious way since the time skip. This is probably her biggest role in any arc since the time skip, since even before then. I think this is probably her biggest role in an arc since Thriller Bark, honestly. So if I'm going to be honest, I want to see something change Nami's status quo, so that her climb attack is no longer this instant ramen kind of stick that just creates the weather she needs. I want to see Nami's own creativity and her own understanding of weather play a more integral role in her fighting again. And that's really my biggest disappointment. So don't believe, for instance, that I'm making this video because I hate Nami. I don't hate Nami. I quite like Nami. She has a couple flaws for me personally, if I'm being objective. But I think it's not things that can't be fixed, and I would like to see her get them fixed. Because she hasn't made any real developments outside of the climate attack. You know, she's maybe gotten a little bit stronger, a little bit more peak human. You know, she still has her good battle instincts, but other than that, you know, Nami hasn't done, you know, anything for me that, you know, has been given that boost. When you look at Usopp, who is another character who is in her tier, and how Oda has treated Usopp. Usopp still has his strategic mind, still play a vital part in all of his fights. He changes his weapon often, he changes his ammunition often, but he also is getting power-ups on the other front. You know, he's gotten a stronger body due to training, which means he can probably take more hits, even though he hasn't been tested in that manner yet. But, well, yeah, he has actually in Dressrosa by the sticky guy. But beyond that, he's also, you know, become a better sniper, and he's also improved his skills by awakening Haki, even if he's not aware of it yet. So Usopp is developing as an all-round fighter, in my opinion, a lot more balanced than Nami. I'm still waiting on Nami to get something else, and I think a Devil Fruit might be the perfect thing to break her current status quo and bring back the Nami from pre-time state, the Nami that needed her smarts and her intelligence to fight, and less of the Nami that only needs a stick that is perfect for every situation to fight. So enough on that. I want to talk about why it's perfect for Nami. And we're going to talk about first of Nami's lack of defensive proficiency. You know, Nami has her mirages, but to stop a direct attack that she can't escape from, Nami really only has one course of action, and that is to use the climb attack to block it. She really just needs the climb attack for any situation as far as to escape an attack. You know, Nami has never been a fighter who takes on attacks directly. She'd rather avoid them wherever possible. But at the same time, you know, defensively, this is weak. When you look at the rest of the New World, you know, they have Haki, they have the ability to defend against attacks, they have powerful bodies and strong bodies that can take hit. Nami, in my opinion, lacks that, and that needs to be addressed. And I think maybe the way for Oda to instantly address that might be the Yuki Yuki no Mi. By giving her a defensive Devil Fruit with like a Logia Devil Fruit, which gives her Logia regeneration, it means Nami can more easily avoid damage. We saw how easy it was for Monet to avoid damage in her Snow Fruit, make herself kind of like a snow entity. And obviously these are abilities that all Logias have, but Nami could also regenerate from attacks. It would make her more durable in the New World, and we wouldn't have to worry, for instance, of how she would fit into an arc or how she would be useful against these powerful opponents. I mean, let's look at the Yonko crews, the squads that we're going to be fighting. You know, then you look at who's going to be fighting the Calamities and the amount of struggle Luffy is having with a commander whose bounty is less than Jack. You know, what's going to happen when we face some Kaido? You know, our strongest fighters are going to be up against the Calamities, which means the crew is going to be up against the weaker fighters in the Yonko crews, which are all 300 to 400 million, as we saw with Baron Tamago and Peckhams, who are just basic fighters. We need our crew members to be up as strong as they can, and a stick is just not going to cut it, in my opinion. I think the Yuki Yuki no Mi gives her the ability to actually contest with these fighters in a more direct way, because she's going to have to fight someone. There are just too many enemies that Nami is just going to be able to avoid fighting anyone but fodders, in my opinion. If she does, it would be kind of a disservice to her character post-time skip. Let's move on to what else it also gives her. When we go back to mirages and how Nami first explained the mirages, she basically creates a wall of cool to warm air that causes light to refract differently. And her understanding of mirages is what allows her to create such great images for a mirage that work perfectly to fool the enemy. If she had the Yuki Yuki no Mi, she could do this without the climb attack. She could literally just use her Devil Fruit to cool down the air in a way that would create a mirage, and it would become far more efficient and far more effective. And it basically, the Yuki Yuki no Mi doesn't replace the climb attack, it doesn't overshadow the climb attack, it works together, allowing her to change the climb attack's functionality to better, you know, balance the two, so that the two work together to create powers. And that's what I think would be perfect for Nami at this stage, because then, you know, you get the people being satisfied with the more instant generation of the storms and weather systems, but you get that Nami influence again back into her fights, and that's what I want most of all. So let's break it down again. We know how weather works. Weather usually forms on the building blocks of three main things: moisture, cold air, and warm air interacting at one meeting point. We know that when cold air and warm air meet, it creates a jet stream. Just think back to Nami's cyclone tempo. Um, but what would be really cool is if Nami could control the cold side or fulfill the cold requirements with the devil fruit. She could then focus the climate out on the heat requirements, and this allows her to create more powerful and more instant storms in much the same way that she did post-time skip, just on a more powerful scale. Using her Yuki Yuki Yumi, she could influence the air to be cold and then influence the air to be hot with her climate attack, a different section of the air. And when the two meet, she could create storms out of that, and then use the climate attack to electrify them like she did pre-time skip. For instance, let's look at how when a warm front meets a cold front and the warm front overpowers a cold front, what you usually get is the warm front rising above the cold front in a rapid manner, which leads to rapid generation of things like thunderstorms, more centralized, more powerful, and whatnot. If it's the other way around and the cold front, manipulates the warm front, what happens is you get more stringy kind of storms. I should say stringy kind of storms. I should say you don't really get a storm. You get more things like drizzles and rain and scattered showers and snow and whatnot. You get those kind of things when the cold front, is dominating the warm front. So in my opinion, um, this is probably, the best way for Nami to move forward, because then when she wants, when the situation calls for it, she can create the type of weather she needs without having to just throw it out of an egg. But she can also up the power of it, because the power of these formations depend entirely the cold and warm air are impacting against each other, and she can control the scale with her devil fruit, the Yuki Yuki no Mi, and she can provide all the moisture that these storms need, so she can actually enhance them. What she has in her climate attack can be enhanced even further. Even if she was to instance to throw up a rain cloud out of her climate attack, she could then add more moisture to the atmosphere with her snow abilities. Use her climate attack to melt that snow down to be moisture and feed the storms and grow them larger. So this is not something that replaces her climate attack at all. It just enhances her fighting capabilities. And let's go further. There's two techniques that we really want to see Nami do. I think everyone wants to see Nami do. It is tornadoes and blizzards. Yes, I 100% agree. We need to see Nami do a real tornado, a really powerful cyclone. But when you think about the practicality of that, even if she could generate it out of a stick, doesn't she really run the risk of putting herself in danger by creating a very powerful tornado? I mean, tornadoes are some of the most powerful weather systems in the world, arguably. I mean, some people would argue hurricanes are stronger, but let's be honest, I feel like a tornado can probably be deemed to be the single most powerful and destructive weather system in the world, and easily the most unpredictable. And a tornado would probably be the strongest thing in her arsenal. If you go back to what Oda said back in Alabasta, he said tornado tempo was her ace. I want to see Nami do a tornado, but she's not at the stage where she can do it without putting herself at risk. Not in a powerful, not in a seriously powerful way at least. And there's also a problem of how to form tornadoes. Tornadoes require a supercell, which is something even beyond a thunderstorm. She can provide the moisture, she can provide the cold air, she can provide the warm air, but creating a supercell requires something called wind shear, which causes the thunderstorm to cycle, something called a mesoclone. Why not, have, if she had the Yuki Yuki no Mi, and we know that when warm air meets cold air, we get jet streams of air. She could manipulate the direction of the air is blowing to create a cyclone using the Yuki Yuki no Mi and her climate attack at different levels, which would then create the wind shear required to generate supercells. Then we could get tornadoes added to her repertoire, and Nami would be able to do some really powerful techniques. And because of her low gain tangibility, she wouldn't have to worry about hurting herself, because she'd be immune to those same techniques. So what I'm saying is, this technique, this devil fruit, allows Nami to be as strong as she could be, without having to worry about the believability of her being able to create things like hurricanes or tornadoes going towards the end of the series with just a stick, and somehow being able to survive within them, or make them, control them to such a degree that she can avoid being damaged by them, even though that really wouldn't make sense. This way you can introduce the fruit and use the fruit as a catalyst for the abilities of the climate attack, not a replacement. You see, I don't believe Nami would ever use the Yuki Yuki no Mi in the same way to Monet. She's far too smart and far too tactical a fighter to do that. But what she could do is she could take the possibilities that the Yuki Yuki no Mi grant her and use them to accentuate the abilities of her climate attack. So when you actually think about it, it actually works. And of course, then she'd be able to create things like blizzards and maybe even packing enough snow to cause avalanches up, by herself. And that would be really good, and it would give her more defensive capabilities. She could build the snow walls that when packed together were so strong even Luffy couldn't break them. Well, he probably could have if he bothered to use Gear 4, but he probably didn't think, that Monet was worthy of it. But, it would give Nami some more defensive capabilities. She could hunker down in a snowstorm. She could hunker down or protect crew members when she's fighting among other crew members from her storm effects. It would allow Nami to be more powerful and yet be safer while doing so. So that's why I think the Yuki Yuki no Mi is perfect for her. I could spend a little bit more time talking about, why, but I actually don't want this video to be too long. We're already at 16 minutes. So what instead I'm going to ask you guys is to do a little bit of research. You can check out my original thread. There I go deep into the science with diagrams and explanations of how weather actually is broken down and how it works. And I encourage you to take a read of it because it does go more in depth than I can actually go in a spoken word video. So really go and check that out. It's going to be in the description. Go and check it out and tell me what you guys think. Do you think that the Yuki Yuki no Mi could be a possibility for Nami? I hope I explained it clear because I tried to gloss over it as fast as possible, but I think it's a possibility. There's going to be a poll that you can check out in the cards. All you have to do is turn on your annotations, check out the cards. There's going to be a poll where you can give your opinion yes or no. Tell me what you guys think. Does Nami need the Yuki Yuki no Mi? My answer is yes. What is yours? Considering obviously the arguments that I made in this video. Alright, thank you guys for listening. This is Wasabifold signing out.